Welcome back, my friends. It is May 21st, 2023, and we got some very interesting stuff to talk about, including some very large earthquakes that have just recently taken place over the last couple hours. You're looking at a 6.8 near Prince Edward Islands. This is right along the fault line of the south end of Africa. A 6.8 downgraded from a 7.2. Now, take a look at the depth of this thing. 10 kilometers in depth. That's basically a default depth they give you when they don't really know how deep it is, but that means it was super shallow. And trust me when I say, when you see earthquakes of that size down in this area, it is a major cause for concern, because anything higher than that is capable of producing a tsunami, which would absolutely have a major effect on South Africa, Madagascar. This thing would move up into the Indian Ocean. Remember, one of the biggest tsunamis known to man took place right about here in the Andaman Sea and kind of came out this way and affected everywhere from India to the entire east side of Africa, Madagascar, Australia. They said this thing even reached down into Antarctica. So once again, we are seeing earthquakes in places that we don't usually see very large earthquakes. And now another very large earthquake taking place in the southwestern Pacific, the same exact area where we saw that near 8.0 earthquake take place near Indonesia in the Loyalty Islands. That pressure has moved up into this area, and you're looking at that earthquake right now near the Solomon Islands. This one was a little deeper at 77.8 kilometers. As we've talked about before, a lot of our deep earthquakes happen in this area. So as we've talked about in many videos, a lot of our deep earthquakes happen in this area of the world. And that 7.7 that took place near the Loyalty Islands was not deep at all. It was actually very shallow. And that's why we had the tsunami from it. That's what caused that tsunami. So just to give you an idea of what's happened in just the past couple days, once again, we just spoke about this earthquake that happened about an hour ago. The 6.8 downgraded near the Prince Edward Islands region. 11 minutes ago, a 6.2 in the Solomon Islands. And then now 3 days ago, we've had that 7.7 in New Caledonia. But as we zoom in, you could see just a day and a half ago, another 7.1 earthquake struck basically the same exact region. And then if we move right above that, a 6.5 took place at the exact same time as this 7.1. So as we back out, we could see the Southwest Pacific is going through some very hard times right now. And again, you know me, I'm going to relate this to the sun, and I have proof of it. We also can't forget 4 days ago, the 6.4 near Guatemala. That was a very concerning earthquake, because we've been seeing a lot of action in Central America. And all it would take is this little push across this thin stretch of land. And we are talking about a major earthquake in the Gulf of Mexico, or at least in the Caribbean Sea, which would eventually affect the Gulf, no doubt about it. We've seen Jamaica have huge earthquakes. In fact, I feel like they are due for one. I don't want you guys to quote me on that, but I just have this strange feeling that near Jamaica and southern Cuba is going to get hit with something pretty strong soon, especially with what's going on with our solar weather. Now, just before May 20th, which was yesterday, we had a large M-class solar flare that lasted a while, which means it put out a lot more energy than, say, these jagged M-class solar flares that just shoot the particles out, and it's pretty much done for. Longer lasting M-class solar flares, those are the ones that release a lot more energy and have a greater effect on Earth once they reach the Earth's magnetic field. Now, since May 20th, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, and now just recently, just as of moments ago, a 5th M-class solar flare. And I'm going to show you the exact sunspot this came from, and you're not going to believe what some of these experts are saying about what this thing could possibly produce even today. Not to mention, overnight last night, we nearly hit an X-class solar flare. You could see that one right here. That was the strongest of the M-class solar flares we've seen over the last day and a half, all coming from the same exact spot. Now, I want to read this to you guys, and I'm going to show you the exact sunspot they are talking about. A dangerous sunspot. Growing sunspot AR3311 has an unstable beta-gamma-delta magnetic field that harbors energy for strong solar flares. NOAA forecasters say there is a 75% chance of M-class flares and a 35% chance of X-class solar flares on May 21st. When it comes to one of your test scores in school, a 35 is not that high, but when it comes to solar flares or the chance of an X-class solar flare, that is an extremely high number. So they are basically telling us that this specific sunspot has a very, very high chance of producing yet another X-class solar flare. And the bad part about that is that now it's even closer to Earth facing. We spoke about this yesterday. This thing is turning towards us as we speak. Also, surprise, surprise, we had a surprise geomagnetic storm. Surprising forecasters, a crack opened in the Earth's magnetic field on May 19th. Solar wind poured through the gap, sparking a G2 class geomagnetic storm. That was raised from a G2 to a G3 within hours. That doesn't usually happen. They don't usually change the strength of the geomagnetic storms, but they did with this one. Naked eye auroras were visible across many northern tier US states. As you can see right here, this is one of the photographs from those auroras. They look beautiful, but they represent something that we don't want to be seeing. I could promise you that. As far as the sunspot they are speaking of, here it is. Sunspot 3311. Now, yes, there is a 3314 and there's a 3313. These are separate sunspots on either side of 3311. But this big grouping right here is what the concern is. When you start seeing these little groups that look like separate sunspots but then become one, that is when things get very concerning. And this is the exact area in which we've been watching. It's the exact sunspot that created the X-class solar flare last week. And it's been responsible for creating most, if not all, the M-class solar flares we've been seeing over the last couple days. Which is why the NOAA experts are claiming that this thing is very capable, is very capable of producing yet another X-class solar flare, and that wouldn't be it. This thing will make its way across the entire face of the sun and eventually be dead on lined up with Earth. Even if we got an X-class solar flare right now, this thing would absolutely have major effects on us. I'm going to show you guys a few videos in a moment of the sun sparking off these M-class solar flares and that near X-class solar flare we saw overnight. But take a look at these coronal holes. This is another thing that's adding to the danger that the Earth could possibly be in based on the fact that these are open gaps in the sun, which means there's a constant stream of solar wind coming out of these coronal holes. And picture Earth right here. We're dead center right across the equator. So you're going to start seeing the solar wind rise in a dramatic rate. So not only do we have these coronal holes that are already just spewing material at Earth's magnetic field, but now we have to worry about these sunspots that are making their way closer and closer and closer day by day towards the center of the sun. And the closer they are to the center of the sun, the more effect they have on Earth. As of right now, our solar wind did go down a little bit, but you could start seeing it begin to start peaking up again. Even just last night, we were over 600 kilometers per second when it came to the solar wind. And that's not just from the solar flares, that's from that coronal hole I just showed you with the constant pressure it's putting on the Earth's magnetic field. This is very important to understand because a lot of people don't realize that the sun controls a lot of things, not just earthquakes and our cell phone service and radio blackouts and things like that, but also it enhances weather. And we've got some situations going on in the Atlantic Ocean right now where we're almost looking at an invest, which would be the beginning stages of a hurricane. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have a hurricane, but they have actually labeled this as an invest. You can see right here, just above Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, that area. Luckily, this part won't be hitting Florida. It's going to go off into the Atlantic, but Florida is going to be getting hit with some significant weather over the next couple days, and it just so happens that this thing's going to ride up the East Coast and almost be a nor'easter for the northeast of the United States. And as I always say, timing is everything. This is going to be taking place during a geomagnetic storm, so this could easily enhance this weather, just like it did with that tornado storm we had back about a month ago now, where we had 52 different tornadoes that completely ravished the north central part of the United States, and that also took place during a major solar storm. And talk about timing, during one of these M-class solar flares, we actually had a transit of the moon pass right in front of the sun. You're going to see it right now. Here it comes. There it goes right there. That's actually the coolest thing ever. I'll show that to you guys one more time. Here we go. Just very, very eerie looking, just seeing the moon come by like that. It's very, very interesting. I love seeing when that happens. And what's even cooler is that it actually took place on my birthday, so that made me feel kind of cool knowing that the moon passed by the sun right in front of the SDO camera. You know, just another little cool thing to throw in there for you guys. Here is another video where we could see that coronal hole, that it's moving its way from left to right towards the center of the sun, which would make it more effective on Earth. We are already feeling the effects of this coronal hole because it constantly spews out those particles like we spoke about before. You're going to see the moon come by again. There we go. And this one here I sped up a little bit just so you can get an idea of how this thing is moving from left to right towards the center of the sun. Again, this even down here, this coronal hole is also affecting us. So the last thing we need is to see anything firing off of this specific sunspot that not just me, but the actual experts at NOAA are saying can produce an X-class solar flare at any given time. In fact, I can almost guarantee we're going to be seeing some strong M-class solar flares from this area. Even down in this area here, there's a large sunspot. It's not as active, but it is very capable of producing those M-class solar flares, and you never know, it could produce an X-class solar flare itself. But just the fact that the people at NOAA are saying that there's a 35% chance of an X-class solar flare coming from that 3311, very interesting numbers by the way, sunspot is not something you see all the time. In fact, they're almost expecting it to happen, which is why I feel like this is very important information to bring to you guys. And with that said, my friends, that's what I got for you for right now. I'm sorry about the long video. I didn't mean to ramble for so long, but there's so much information out there that we need to know about. It's very important to spread it. I would very much appreciate if you guys share these videos on your other social media platforms. It helps the channel tremendously. I appreciate each and every one of you. Shout out to Canada, and you know I'll be back in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Stop right there, my friends. If you have not already, click that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Click all and you will get all notifications from this channel. And trust me, you won't be disappointed.